are signs, clear ones. If you're paying attention, the untrained eye looks for words, the trained one looks for truth, and truth often lives in what's unspoken. Plato once said, all learning has an emotional base, and emotional truth can't be faked for long. It leaks out, not through loud announcements, but through posture, breath, and nervous tension. So, if you want to get better at reading people, stop focusing only on what they say. Start focusing on what they show. But here's the thing, before you can read anyone else, you have to be honest about your own signals. That's where it begins. You have to become the observer of yourself. How does your body change when you're pretending everything's okay? What does your face do when you're trying not to cry? Notice the way your jaw tenses when you're hiding anger, the way your hands fidget when you feel exposed. These small behaviors are your tells, and once you learn your own, you'll start seeing them in others, not through effort, but through recognition. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That includes the unconscious movements of your body, the things you've been doing for years. Without even realizing, your body remembers everything, even when your mind tries to forget, and so does everyone else's. The more honest you are with your own body's truth, the more easily you'll spot the same in others. Reading people isn't about mind games, it's about paying attention to the parts of communication most people overlook. Think about it when someone you know walks into a room and says they're okay, but you feel they're not. That's not magic, that's presence. That's you catching the misalignment between what they're saying and what they're showing. The more still you are inside, the louder those subtle signals become. And it's not about overanalyzing every move someone makes, it's about seeing patterns over time. That's where the real story unfolds, not in a single twitch or glance, but in the way those behaviors repeat. When emotions rise, you study your reactions, your tension, your deflections, not to criticize, but to understand. The more clearly you see your own habits, the more those patterns start to make sense. When you see them in the people around you, their silence won't confuse you, their forced smile won't fool you, because you've seen it before in yourself. This kind of awareness doesn't just make you more observant, it makes you more compassionate. When you recognize someone else's mask, you don't tear it off, you understand why it's there. You've worn one too, and that understanding, that calm presence is what draws people out. Not pressure, not questioning, just your quiet ability to see beyond the surface without. There's a story waiting to be seen. Self-awareness sharpens external awareness. It always starts with you. The clearer you are about your own habits, your reactions, your emotional patterns, the easier it becomes to spot those same things in other people. But if you've never stopped to notice what your body does when you're anxious, or how your tone shifts when you're hiding something, then your ability to read others will be shaky at best. You'll be guessing and guessing, especially when it comes to human behavior. Is dangerous. You might mistake silence for rejection, or confidence for arrogance. What you see in others will always be filtered through what you haven't yet faced in yourself. So when you're with someone, really with them, slow down, drop the urge to steer the conversation or fill the silence. Attention to the space before anyone speaks. That space holds more than we give it credit for. There's energy in a room that changes even if nothing is said out loud. The way someone's body shifts when a certain topic comes up, the subtle tension in the air that no one wants us to name. You don't have to label it, just notice it, because understanding doesn't begin with conclusions. It begins with feeling, and know. Both are transformed, but for any true reaction to happen, both people must be fully there. People don't open up because you say all the right things. They open up when they feel safe, and safety often comes from silence, not speech. From the kind of attention You trusted them with your identity, not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't need to say. They weren't trying to be impressive. They were just there. That's when you opened up. Not because they demanded it, but because their stillness invited it. And that's the paradox. The less you try to read people, the more you end up seeing. Not because you're working harder, but because you've stopped interfering. You've stopped reaching, guessing, pushing, and now the truth has space to speak. But it doesn't shout, it never does. It whispers in body language, in the slight change in rhythm, in the avoidance of a topic. You don't catch those things when you're rushing. You catch them when you're quiet. What's most revealing isn't found in big moments. It's found in repetition, in the patterns that emerge when someone thinks no one is watching, how they react to discomfort, whether they always deflect emotion, whether their energy shrinks when asked a vulnerable question. But if they start breaking down when pressure shows up, if they lie when they feel cornered, deflect when emotions get close or shrink, the second someone sees through the surface, those aren't accidents, they're rhythms, patterns, and patterns always speak louder than isolated behavior. The mind, when pushed, reveals itself, not in the words we prepare, but in the things we repeat when we're uncomfortable. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." True might still be you in clear. If you rush to pin down who they are based on one interaction, you'll likely get it wrong. Most of what we are isn't visible in a single conversation. Real understanding takes time. Let that be okay, and maybe you're wondering, without needing to be right, without rushing to define what something means. You don't read people by locking into your first impression. You read them by staying curious. Real curiosity isn't pushy. It doesn't try to finish people's sentences. It doesn't assume it already knows the answer. Curiosity is quiet. It listens beyond the surface. It hears what isn't being said. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That kind of understanding begins when we stop reacting and start exploring. When someone says, "I'm fine," but every story they tell drips with disappointment, pay attention to the story, not just the seminal. When they say, "I trust you," but suddenly dodge when you touch on something deep, listen to the shift in energy, not just the words. Truth rarely walks in wearing a sign. It hides in the little gaps, the contradictions, the places where what's said and what's shown don't quite line up, and contradiction, more often than not, is where the truth lives. Not because people want to deceive you, but because people are complicated. We're always balancing who we are with who we think we need to be. So, if you're only listening for consistency, you'll miss the real stuff. The uncertainty, the fear, the unfinished thoughts. Those are the pieces that matter. That's why you need something deeper than analysis. You need presence, a groundedness that doesn't move every time someone else's energy shifts, because the last skill, the one that pulls all the others together, is this: hold your center. If their anger makes you flinch, if their sadness drowns you, if their silence makes you spiral, you're not reading, you're reacting. And when you react, you lose the signal. You can't see them clearly, because your emotions take up all the space. As long as you're tangled in your own feeling, there's no room to notice what's actually unfolding in front of you. But if you can stay steady, if you can feel their tension without tightening up yourself, if you can witness their fear without making it yours, then something powerful happens. You become the still pond, and people, without meaning to, start showing you who they are. Not because you pressed them, not because you figured them out, but because they felt safe. They sensed that you weren't trying to control or judge or fix them. You were just there, open, present. Plato said, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." That battle isn't always loud. It doesn't always show up in clear, obvious ways. But when you're calm enough, quiet enough, attentive enough, you start to notice what others miss. The tremor in the voice, The shift in the eyes, the pause that carries weight, and none of that requires certainty. It just requires presence. When you hold your center, you become the mirror. In that mirror, people begin to see themselves, not the version they rehearse for the world, but the one that slips through in honest moments. That's where real connection starts. Not in knowing everything, but in making space for what wants to be seen in the end. The quietest presence often hears the loudest truths. You don't need to chase understanding, just create the stillness for it to arrive. If this spoke to something in you, there's another video on the screen now that'll take you even deeper. You for being here and for being a part of Stoic Journal. The journey continues not in noise, but in awareness. Stay grounded, stay curious, and I'll see you again soon.